type of night is it? Bowl night! Let me hear it, National Panel!
Bowl night!
Where have you been? Penn State, Notre Dame. What more could you possibly ask for? Tonight, where might the big plays come from? How do James Franklin and Marcus Freeman wield the hammer, or the shillelagh, if you will? We'll talk it up. Your Orange Bowl tonight. Also, NFL news of the day, Baltimore Ravens announcing Zay Flowers out for Saturday night, what it means for Lamar Jackson and Baltimore. Let's go around the horn. Zay Flowers, not balling.
Bowl night. Poor guy.
Late. Penn State, Notre Dame, the profiles for each of these teams. It's like a supervillain pointing a laser at your own personal Orange Bowl. Not so different, you and I. Defense, run game, tradition. The head-to-heads were great in the 80s. Who would remember those? The recent tradition of can they win the big game? Tonight is a big game. The big game before the biggest game, but a big game. Riley Leonard, Drew Allar. Will someone become a legend tonight? Jeremiah Love playing. Abdul Carter will be a game-time decision. Injuries for both of those big players. And yes, Marcus Freeman and James Franklin. On how will this Orange Bowl be won? Around the horn, Courtney Cronin.
It'll be one akin to what it looked like in those games that I didn't watch during the 1980s because I wasn't born yet, but a defensive slugfest and leaning on what got Notre Dame to this point. And that's their run game. I'm not asking Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, to reinvent the wheel here. I'm asking him to lean on how they got to this place in the first place with the top 5 rushing offense in yards per attempt and top 5 in rushing touchdowns. To see Riley Leonard not necessarily take a back seat, but maybe a step back here. They're averaging 10 more points a game when he's averaging less than 30 pass attempts in these games. And that's better. Like, watch him use his legs in critical situations in order to get this team over the hump. Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, I know he's not 100%. You have plenty of weapons in this backfield to get your offense moving. I don't need him to throw for 150 yards. If it wants to be 90 the way that he did against Georgia, so be it. You're also leaning on this defense, though. The performance that they had against the Bulldogs is something that I think certainly carries over.
So you think it'll be won by Notre Dame controlling the line of scrimmage and Leonard maybe using his legs? Sounds like you're leaning Irish, but I'll get to that in a second. Tim Calishaw, around the horn to you. How will tonight be won?
Yeah, I too have trouble remembering the 80s, Tony. Not so much because I wasn't born, but I do know this about these teams. They're very similar teams, but I do think Penn State is a little better, a little more equipped to win this game and get to play in their first national championship in almost 40 years. You look at that Notre Dame-Georgia game. You give Notre Dame credit for winning the game. In that game, they had one touchdown drive. It was 13 yards after an interception. So they had a lot of trouble with their offense. I do think a little more balanced. Penn State's had 2 more days to heal from last week for Abdul Carter. They played Tuesday night. Notre Dame played Thursday. People dismiss SMU as if Penn State had this walkover. That's the 3rd highest scoring team in the land. They shut down people. So pay attention to that.
Sure. Notre Dame could say the same for Indiana. Let's go around the horn to Kevin Blackistone now on how tonight will be won.
Well, I want to pick up on where Tim was going, talking about SMU being shut down by Penn State, because Penn State is going to win this game with their defense. And we all know this is going to be a grinded out game. They've got a great running game, tandem running backs. But the important thing to remember about the 2 important things to remember about Penn State's defense, first of all, their top 10 overall defense. But most importantly, they're number 1 in red zone defense. And why is that important in this game? Because we saw the struggles that Notre Dame has with their kicking game. And if they are kept out of the red zone and have to rely on field goals to win a close game, that is what could come back to haunt Notre Dame, and that's what could lean Penn State to a victory and move them on to the next round, the big game.
Frank Isola, around the horn to you.
Yeah. I'm just hoping that we get a great game. Thus far, the college football playoffs have been rather pedestrian, which is usually a way you could sum up Penn State in their offense. They win because of defense, and they win because they can run the ball, which maybe is why they haven't won a national championship, like Tim said, in 40 years. But I think they can control the line of scrimmage. Notre Dame was good. To me, they weren't that impressive against a Georgia team that was using a backup quarterback. One thing to keep in mind, if you can cut down the turnovers against Notre Dame, you have a great chance for this reason. Notre Dame converted all those turnovers this year into over 140 points. So they take advantage of those opportunities. But there's something about this Penn State team. They didn't beat Ohio State. They didn't beat Georgia. But look at this path to the national championship game. Not going to say it's easy, but they probably caught a bit of a break here.
Well, and the game against Oregon as well, right, in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
Tim Kalishaw, back to you. You don't remember much of the 80s. I don't remember much of your answer here. So take me back to the start here. Who do you like in tonight's game, and how will it be won?
I like Penn State. I like Tyler Warren. He's this year's Brock Bowers. He's more than just a tight end. They get him the ball, and Penn State wins a low-scoring.
So that's
game.
3 for Penn State. Do I have that right? Courtney Cronin, I'll give you the last word after the horn. You're the only one on the Irish.
Yeah, no, I mean, I saw them up close. I think that defensively they are a better team than Penn State, as similar as these two are. I would just be worried about Abdul Carter on the other side of it for Penn State. How healthy is he? Is he going to play? Sounds like he's going to give it a go, but a less than 100% Abdul Carter might not be great against
Picks
Notre
you
Dame.
make equal the points you get or the mutes you take. 3 for Penn State. We'll move on. NBA last night, Cavs 129, Thunder 122. This game delivered on all fronts. Play, meeting hype and expectation. All the lead changes. How great was that run in the third quarter when they were both throwing haymakers at each other, and the atmosphere. Sign you up for 7, and I'll give you an 8 because they play next week in OKC. But for this discussion, I want number 1 takeaway, number 2 takeaway, the Mobley, Allen, Garland takeaways. I want it all. And let me leave this one piece of information here for you. Cleveland's pace for the full season, 73-9. Around the horn to Frank Isola on the Cavs, and whether they removed all doubt that they're the best team in the league this season.
Well, I think if they stay healthy, they certainly could win a championship. For me, it's still Boston. But that game lived up to the hype last night, and this is what I like about Cleveland. Their best player, their most accomplished player, is Donovan Mitchell. He went 3 for 16, and they still won the game. How about Max Strus, Ty Jerome coming off the bench, both going 6 for 7. Jarrett Allen was dominant. And the one thing about Oklahoma City, they could not secure a rebound in that fourth quarter, and not having Chet Holmgren there was big. But make no mistake about it, Cleveland is a legit team. Last year in the playoffs, Jarrett Allen was hurt. Donovan Mitchell missed games. I still think Boston is the team, but this Cleveland team, better than last year.
Better than last year, but you're not going the full ride here with me.
Not yet.
This is the best team in the NBA right now. Kevin Blackistone, around the horn to you.
Well, right now in the second week of January, I've got to lead towards the Cavaliers. I mean, what have they not done to impress you to think that they aren't the best team in the league? They have split with Boston, the champions, all right? So they've done that. And then last night you saw them repel another team that everyone is considering as a team that could possibly get to the finals. They have size. They did a smart thing in signing Mobley. They have a superstar who can get you over the edge anytime he wants, and Donovan. So I absolutely think that this is the best team right now in the NBA.
Courtney Cronin, around the horn to you.
I don't know if I'm going to call them the best team in the NBA right now because I think the gap and the margin between them and Oklahoma City is still really small. Look at the lead changes that you talked about. The game was never more than 8 points within any point of the game and for the 48 minutes we saw last night. And we get to see it again next week, so maybe we'll be a different answer then. But I love watching what Kenny Atkinson does when his team's leading scorer is struggling. They relied on their depth, whether it was Niang, Ty Jerome, certainly Karis LeVert in there too, and seeing Max Strus come back after missing 28 games, reminds me of Boston last year. When you have 7 guys who are scoring in double figures, you're at a really good spot. And all the assists that they got, the contributions from the bench, they're a deep team. The deepest teams that can go into June are the ones that you trust the most. But until we see Chet Holmgren come back, I don't know if I can say they're that much better than Oklahoma City.
Tim Kalishaw, around the horn to you. Did last night remove all doubt Cleveland's the best team in the NBA this season?
I don't think it removed all doubt. I think we know there's 2 great teams right now, a 32-4 team, a 30-6 team. And Oklahoma City playing this long stretch without Holmgren, playing last night without Caruso. These teams play again next week in Oklahoma City. We'll see how that goes. But I do need to give Cleveland credit. You score 129 points against the Thunder's defense, and as Frank said, you do it on a night when Donovan Mitchell is being well defended and is not hitting. You've got a lot of weapons, and I think a healthy Evan Mobley playing all this year, people seeing what he can do when they can keep all this stuff together. This is a really
keeping all that
formidable team.
stuff together. It's a good advice for all of us. Frank, to broaden it out just a little bit, because I respect your answer here on Cleveland, but to focus on OKC a little bit too. Which team feels like the bigger sure thing to get to the finals for you?
And remember one thing about OKC, no Chet Holmgren, no Alex Caruso. And this team defends. They held Boston to 27 second-half points on Sunday. So they've been on a run where they beat the Knicks on Friday, Boston on Sunday. They go on the road. They're going to be in Madison Square Garden tomorrow night. That team I tend to trust a little bit more because defensively they get after it, and they're as physical as a team as you're going to find in the NBA.
You want to try to dance on that question a little bit?
Well, I just think Oklahoma City's a little better bet. Yeah, to get to the finals, you still look at Boston as being a roadblock for Cleveland. Not saying they can't beat them, but you got to beat the champions.
Courtney Cronin?
I like Cleveland. Let's give Cleveland its respect. I just don't think that the gap between them and Oklahoma City is that deep. So I'll say Cleveland.
And KB?
I still like Cleveland right now, though I have to admit I think OKC's route may be a little easier.
Taking a break. Buy or sell next. NFL news today comes to us from Baltimore, and it is significant. Ravens announcing Zay Flowers out for Saturday night's game versus Pittsburgh. This one of those Week 18 injuries. You saw it happening. Ravens weren't locked into a spot. They played hard. Flowers going down right here. He was big all year, of course. He's a Pro Bowler, but specifically in that Baltimore win over Pittsburgh in December, a 100-yard game. Unavailable for Lamar Jackson Saturday night. Tim, how big of a loss is this for Baltimore?
I mean, I think it's sizable. When they beat the Steelers in Week 17, he had 100 yards receiving. Nobody else on Baltimore had 40 yards. He's the downfield weapon. Now, they could go to Bateman. They could go to both tight ends. Lamar's got some weapons. Still got Derrick Henry. Still a lot to like about Baltimore. But this is a significant loss. Without him, that makes things a lot easier for the Pittsburgh secondary.
Cronin, how about you?
I think it's a little deal. If we're going on like the deal spectrum here, it's right there in the middle. It's not the worst thing to happen, having seen how Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews contributed to the passing game last week against Cleveland. But you know, they don't ask a lot of their receiving core lately. Like when you've got Derrick Henry averaging 6.8 yards per carry the last time they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think that they're going to be going that same route where you lean on him, you lean on Lamar and his legs, and you pick your spots with the passing game. Certainly they're going to want him back for the divisional playoffs and beyond that, but I think they'll be able to get by the Steelers, this version at least, in the wild card round without him.
Kevin Blackistone, Zay Flowers out. How big a deal for Baltimore?
I think it's a big deal just from the standpoint that the Steelers are Lamar Jackson's kryptonite for whatever reasons. He's 3-5 against them all time, 1-2 at home, 73.1 rating against them, and now he loses arguably his biggest splash weapon. So I think it is very concerning.
And Frank Isola.
Yeah, bingo, Kevin. I mean, you still have Derrick Henry, you still have Mark Andrews, the tight end, but for Lamar Jackson, you mentioned Pittsburgh as his kryptonite. So are the playoffs. Is this something that could mess with his head just a little bit? Because, let's face it, you go into the playoffs, there's no player with more scrutiny on him than Lamar Jackson because he's been an outstanding regular season player. It hasn't translated into the playoffs.
So is this loss of Flowers enough for you to lean Pittsburgh's way in this game, Frank Isola?
Well, you mentioned the other day that 2-minute offense by Pittsburgh in their last game with Russell Wilson.
That was enough for you. Okay,
I'm not willing to go down that road.
Blackistone, you're calling it a big loss.
It is a big loss. I still am leaning towards the Ravens just that much.
More NFL news. Raiders firing GM Tom Telesco today. That's the day after they fired Antonio Pierce. Telesco 1 year on the job. Now the Raiders look for a head coach GM combo. They're going to be looking for them both. Meanwhile, across the league, in the 6 head coach openings, meetings, the virtuals with all the assistants who are in the playoffs this week. Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, Brian Flores, Arthur Smith. And then face-to-face with other ranking the 6 job openings here, Courtney Cronin. One is in your city, Chicago. How do you rank the magnificent 6?
I still think the Bears are the top opening. First and foremost, they have the quarterback. Look at a place like Las Vegas. You don't have a roster to compete with in the next couple of years. You don't have a quarterback either. And this is not the year to be getting one from the draft or in free agency. So you solve the biggest issue by having the most important piece in place. The Bears have $80 million in cap space for next year. That's fifth most in the NFL. They've got 4 draft picks right now in the top 72. You're in the biggest market of all of these teams remaining. I would say the most important one in Chicago. And, you know, if regardless of GM and head coach not being on the same timeline, I still think that this is going to be the most attractive.
Kevin Blackistone, did Courtney sway you that Chicago is the #1 job opening?
Well, Courtney didn't sway me. Caleb Williams swayed me. 3,500 yards passing, 20 touchdowns against 6 picks. I mean, you've already got the most important position on the team there for the future. So that, to me, is the most attractive job opening
I've
going.
said what Williams' rookie year was in some ways whelming, even considering all the storm
With that
and drama
coaching
around.
staff?
I understand, but with that culture around you right now, that's going to be the same. Frank Isola, around the horn to you.
Yeah, personally, I would take the Jet job. This way I don't have to move out of my house. But if I was neutral, I would want the Jacksonville job. Because, A, I have a quarterback already, #1. That division is winnable, and I have cap space. That's the job that you want.
So Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, and some would say the whelming last 2 years for him. And by the way, picking the Jets was the literal homer pick for Isola. Tim Kalisha, how about you?
It wasn't Courtney and it wasn't KB and Caleb Williams. It was Wilbur Marshall in the snow in the '85 championship game. Yes, I was there, Courtney, covering that game. Covered the Super Bowl, too. If you can be the guy who brings the Bears back to Super Bowl prominence, there is no better job than that. Although I will say the Raiders, with some of their cap space and some of their players, none of them being quarterbacks, you got to deal with Mark Davis, but you get maybe you can name your own GM like Shanahan did. Bring John Lynch.
So you like the
Lovie
Raiders
Smith
job.
got
No
him
one
to
said the
Super Bowl.
Patriots.
The
No one
Raiders
thinks
did
the
a good job.
Patriots is a job opening that's
after this
attractive.
week,
Some are saying that is the most attractive. Okay, we'll move on. Buy or sell 3. Is it time to blow up the Sun? The Suns. 16-19 have lost 8 of 10. Lost to Charlotte this week. We know about the Bradley Beal starting, benching, no trade clause fiasco as well. The window of Booker and Durant. KB, are you hitting a detonator on the Sun?
Boom! Blow it up.
Ooh.
At the end of last season, when they lost in the playoffs, Devin Booker was very honest in his assessment of where the future was for this team. He said, we have to work with what we got. Well, they've worked with what they got, and look where they are. Going nowhere. Blow it up.
Frank Isola?
As Howard Cosell would say, it is over. I agree with Kevin. Bradley Beal's a lovely guy, but come on, he's not a superstar anymore. I would get rid of everybody, but I'm keeping Devin Booker because Devin Booker.
All right, but that means you would be getting rid of Kevin Durant as well.
I'm going to try to get. There's a lot of teams that will
Well,
want
now
Kevin
that
Durant.
makes
He's
this
got a
trade
lot left.
deadline very, very interesting. You want to throw out a possible destination for Kevin Durant while you're at it, Frank?
Well, he was very close with Ime Udoka in Brooklyn.
I like that phase.
So I would not be surprised. Maybe the Houston Rockets.
Kind of like the heat on that take. Tim Kalisha, how about you?
You have to stay the course. They still never really gone into the playoffs with everybody of these 3 healthy. And now they got to get to the playoffs, I understand. They got to move up the standings a little bit. But
That's an issue.
I'm not giving up on a Kevin Durant team.
Courtney Cronin.
They should blow it up. It's just going to be difficult to do that. When you insert Ryan Dunn into this lineup over Bradley Beal, they have a plus 16.2 net differential rating. So obviously it was not money well spent to bring Bradley Beal in. I just think it's going to be difficult. He has that no trade clause.
Yeah, we
How
don't
to
do it
move
because
him.
it's easy.
You
We
have
do
to
it
get
because
into
it's
agreement
hard,
with
Courtney
first.
Cronin. But
holds
you've got
all the
enough
cards.
points to advance. Thank you, Tim Kalisha, Frank Isola. Cronin, Blackistone, showdown next. Deion Sanders on GMA3 saying he'd consider coaching in the NFL only if he was coaching his sons. ESPN Scouts Inc. Top 200 right now. Shedeur Sanders, number 9. Shiloh Sanders is unlisted. Courtney, are you taking this seriously?
I'm not, because there are a lot of terms and conditions that would come with Deion making a jump into the NFL. He said previously that he's happy at Colorado. I don't know if there's any team, even this coaching cycle, that would make sense for him.
Kevin Blackistone?
Yeah, you know, I'm not going to dismiss it because Deion has gotten his way so far everywhere he's been, taking his sons with him. So if he can take his number 1 ranked quarterback son, sure, it could happen.
But how could he do that? I don't understand, especially if Shador's not in the top now 5 to 8 or 9. It seems like there's too much. This is not LeBron and Bronny. We'll move on. NHL announcing their stadium series for next season. And the host teams has drawn everybody's attention because it's the Florida Panthers, where the Marlins play, and the Tampa Bay Lightning, where the Buccaneers play. Outdoor hockey in Florida. KB, good idea, great idea, or what could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? You know what? Maybe they should call the Building Museum here in Washington, D.C. right now, which just laid down a plastic ice sheet so people could skate indoors without having to worry about cold weather. That's ridiculous. Come on.
I just need people to stop overcomplicating this. If you're playing hockey outdoors, why don't you play it in the land of 10,000 frozen lakes at this time of year? Put it on a pond in Minnesota somewhere.
I love this idea, you know, because have a running clock. When the ice runs out, game's over. That's it. Kevin Blackistone.
That's no good.
30 seconds of baseball.
Just one last celebration for President Jimmy Carter, number 39. A great sports fan, grew up playing tennis, played tennis at the White House, was the first president to bring all 3 major championship teams to the White House, brought 400 people from NASCAR to the White House for a celebration because he loved NASCAR. Also loved playing softball, was a great runner, ran cross country at Navy. Thank you, Jimmy Carter, for what you did for sports.
Thank you, Kevin Blackistone. We'll see you guys tomorrow.